Let's see what we can get
Yes.
wrong today.
Or what we can get right, and
We're
then
getting
focus on how we can
everything.
make sure that we improve for next time.
We'll get everything right. Can people let us know if the audio is any use? Oh shit, we're already counting down. Sorry.
Tim, that's one.
Oh, hey, that went wrong. I completely lost track of the time, even though I said, oh well. Good afternoon, hello, and welcome to the skill stream. It was supposed to be 3 of us today. Naomi was going to join us, and then we ran into technical difficulties. So Naomi is supporting us in the chat, talking about murdering ravens. And as last week, I am joined by. Oh, look at this! Oh, look! Can you see what's wrong? Can you see what's wrong? I'm gonna have to change that. Oh no!
Oh no, Tim.
Oh, this is dreadful.
What have you
Oh
done?
no. How am I going to
So I am
change
not
that?
Naomi Bryce Joseph. I am Alexander Wood.
You are not. No. How am I going to change this without blowing up the? Oh, I know. Yeah. There we go. There we go.
While Tim fixes that, I'm going to introduce you to this live stream. So today we're going to be talking all about group work, especially a number of common problems that you might face within group work. So what we're going to be discussing first of all is what is group work, why do you actually have to do group work at university, and then some of the common pitfalls and ways that you can mistakes that people do make when doing group work. Also, that you can understand what mistakes people make and how you can avoid them yourself. So today we're joined by myself. I'm going to be talking from my perspective as a student and also the research that I've done for group work when making the group work skills guides. And we've got Tim, who has lots of experience running group work assessments.
You were going to say legend, weren't you? I like legend. I am a legend, yes. Anyway, we fixed the little problem we started off with, Alex. Isn't that wonderful?
Yes, I am now Alexander Wood. I am no longer Naomi.
Well, we had an unexpected Naomi straight away, in a way. It's good, isn't it? Anyway, Alex, you've told us what we're talking about, so that's good. Where do you want to start today? What is the main thing you want to talk about?
So I'm just going to give an overview of what the session, and then we'll dive straight into a podcast a little bit about group work and why we do it. So we're going to first of all do a little bit of discussion about group work, why you do it, why it's important and whatnot. Then we're going to talk about some tips for group work and also some difficulties that you may face in group work, and Tim's going to explain all about how you can avoid them. We're then going to show you on our library resource spotlight a task management sheet, which can be really useful in helping you to manage a group work assignment. I'm then going to talk about group presentations and how you can give you some advice to how you can ace them and avoid some common pitfalls that people fall into. And then we'll be having some time for questions, and we'll be able to showcase some useful resources for group work. So the first thing that we're going to do, though, Tim, is we're going to talk all about group work. So, Tim, what is group work and why do we actually do group work?
Yeah, so group work it can be many things. Let's start off straight away with saying the group work can be 2 people working together on a project. It can be 15 people working together on a technical challenge, whatever it is. So group work basically is just people working together to achieve an outcome that they want to achieve. And I think the more relevant question is, why do we have group work in our academic profile, in our academic work, if you like? And that's mainly because once you stop being a student, and even before, I always find that a weird argument, actually. I will elaborate on that. But when you get into a workplace, you'll be expected to work with people. Me, Alex, and Naomi work together almost every day on an enormous amount of stuff. And understanding how that dynamic works is really important. Understanding how to behave and operate in a group is really important. So it makes sense as one of the key skills at university that you get out of your university degree. Having that ability to operate in a group is really important. And like I said, you always hear, oh, well, you'll have to use it in the workplace. If you haven't worked in a group before you came to university, then I would like to know what's going on in your life. Because if you've not worked, on the sports pitch or whatever it is, you've been working in a group anyway, even in a family context, whatever you want to describe it as. So group work is one of those things that's very natural to us, but doesn't always come naturally. And in particular, the challenge for university is assessed group work, I think. Have you got any experience with assessed group work, Alex?
Yeah, so I was involved in a number of group projects. Some went really, really well, and some others, actually, we had a few difficulties that we'll allude to later on how we got over those. But one thing that I really found that group work was useful for is helping you make friends with people outside of your individual circle. So it was really good for making contacts, meeting new people, and also to start building relationships or learning to build relationships in a professional environment with people you might not know.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why group work is often included in the first and second years, is because you'll be working with people, you'll be learning to make new friends and connections who can help you throughout your degree.
Yeah, it's just one of those key skills, isn't it? There's no way around it. And even if you were to go for a career where you think that you can do everything on your own, even then, the skills that you learn in operating in a group are really important. It's all about communicating, about understanding the context and the challenges of other people around you. So it's just something that you need to get on with and that you need to do. So have we got?
Sure, I understand.
Oh wow, Siri, that was good.
Oh, I'm sorry, Siri. Hopefully, we can help you understand throughout the rest of the work.
I know.
Live stream.
Oh dear. I thought I'd switched everything off. That's only the second thing to have gone wrong today, so we'll leave it at that. So what are we going to do, Alex? Are we going to try and give some advice about all of this?
Yes. So, Tim, would you like to start off by saying a piece of advice that you give to people who are doing group work?
Yeah, so one of the key things I think is to have accountability built into your group work. So make sure that you can explain who's been doing what and how you got to those decisions as well. So yeah, I'm sure I'll get to talk about that a bit more, but having that accountability is really important, I think.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. Working out who's doing what and knowing what an overall plan is, I think is vital. And we've actually got a task management sheet that can help you work out who everyone is in the group, what they're working on, and what everyone's deadlines and own goals is. And they'll show you that in the library resource spotlight slightly later on in the workshop.
Yeah, and
getting.
Sorry, Alex, carry on.
I was going to say, but my first piece of advice for group work is, from the very start of group work, is actually try and get to know the group that you're working with. Don't just try and start doing work. At least try to get to know who people are, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and what really they're good at. Because then you can help pair people up into tasks that benefit that work well with their skill set.
Yeah. So I always like bringing up this example when I was doing a master's in Sheffield. Way too long ago now. Oh dear, that really is long ago. But I worked with in a group. It was a very big international population, if you like. And the group that I was in, that I will never forget, I worked together with two Chinese students, a lady and a gentleman. And the lady was really dedicated, very good at detail, really precise worker, got everything done in no time. And the gentleman sort of disappeared most of the day, and we never quite understood what was going on. Until I actually realized that what was happening was that he stayed up at night so that he could talk to his friends over in China, play games with them online, stuff like that. So his daytime was actually his nighttime. And once I realized that, we could then start planning meetings differently and actually make it more appropriate for him to be part of that group as well. So yeah, getting to know goes beyond knowing the name. It's also understanding people's patterns and what they like doing and not like doing.
Yeah, it can really help you to work well together as well. So I always had a first meeting, and we would, for most of it, just not even talk about the work. We'd just introduce ourselves, talk about what we know, and really get to know how we worked and we were formulating a plan. So with every group I've worked in, we've never followed the same formula of this is exactly how we will work every single time. Yeah. There's always been a bit of we take into account individual circumstances and how individuals want to work best, and we adapt every time.
We've got a question, Alex, that I'm just wanting to address real quick. Naomi's already talking about it as well. But Leon has asked if I have a group journal online, is this where I would put my updates? Yes, absolutely. And it's a really good idea to have somewhere a shared resource that you can use to store, what you've been doing, who's been doing it. So that's really great. And actually, as a university, we offer all the tools for that, don't we? So we've got our Teams and OneNote and all those different tools that you can use for that. So absolutely do use that. Have you got another top tip, Alex?
Yeah, so just speaking about that, there's actually quite a lot of online tools that you can use for group work. So Tim just mentioned Teams. You can set up a team within Teams to share files, to chat. There's also If you don't want to share files in Teams, there's also, I use Dropbox and things like that to share files. But Teams is also really good for having meetings. There are also apps out there such as To Do, which you can access through Udo. So on Udo, there's a Microsoft Office 365 tile, and you can access that called To Do, which is really, really good for planning individual actions. And you can then assign them to people and share them as a group, which I think is really good.
There's actually a tool, Alex, that's called Planner, and we don't use it
Yeah.
on a day-to-day basis, but for group work, that's really good. And you can actually set targets for different people in that. It's meant to help with streamlining that group work
Yeah.
process, if you like. Yeah.
And there's a few apps out there that are like notice boards. What was the app that we used, Tim, within our teams that we had like
Padlet.
different Padlet? Yeah, so we used
Padlet.
Padlet to post sticky notes and almost had like progress lists of what the tasks are and who's doing what, and that was really good to get your head around the overall big picture.
Yeah. Something else that is really important that people underestimate, I think, is having regular meetings. So again, we have a weekly skills meeting where we bring together everybody who's involved with the work that we do. And having that regular touch point is really important because it means that you can discuss not just the work that you've done, but the work that you are about to do, and you can see where other people are at, and you can support each other in achieving things. So that's really important. And that, again, these online tools really help in facilitating that. So in Teams, for example, it's really easy to set up a quick meeting, find out when people are available, and just get on with it. And that's definitely something that will benefit you as a group if you have very regular touch points.
Yeah, I totally agree. Having a regular meeting that everyone can attend and almost setting them up with time and setting them up with notice means that everyone can attend them. And if people can let you know if they can't attend, they can send submissions or what they've done in advance in written format and so on. And that can really help with making sure work ticks along, but also checking progress. Because I think it is really important to meet as a whole group. And if you are splitting tasks into subgroups, meeting as subgroups, but having regular meetings, one every week or two, that can be really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And how about planning the work that you want to do?
So something that I would recommend is to actually try and use backwards planning to plan out the entire group work assessment and work out what needs to be done and try and work out a timeline. So I'd recommend create a timeline for your group and make your meetings revolve around that timeline, or make that timeline work around the meetings you've got planned. And that way you can try and set yourself deadlines, because if you just say, okay, we want the whole thing done by, I don't know, the 31st, 31st is bad, 31st of December, let's say we want it done by the 31st of December. Well, if you don't set yourself interim deadlines within your group, you can end up just missing progress or not, or end up rushing. So setting yourself small deadlines via the timescale, that can really help you to make sure everything's ticking along and bits and pieces get done and reflected on and properly worked on.
Yeah. And not only that, you're going to talk a bit later about doing presentations as a group.
Yes.
And part of that planning as well is make sure that you all understand the bigger picture as well. Having that bigger picture is really important because you're working towards a joint outcome. So that big picture needs to be kept track of and keep being reiterated. Yeah.
And one thing that I would always recommend about that big picture is understand the big picture. What everyone's doing is good, because you can actually give feedback to individuals who are working on different areas, because it's group work. Essentially, you aren't just working individually on one task that's then being split up, so each person's doing different parts.
Yeah.
The one person might be leading on that task, but it doesn't mean that they, in the meetings, they can present what they've done, and you can give them some feedback. And if you understand what they're doing, you can actually give them proper feedback and act on it. Otherwise, it's just their work, not the group's work. So that's what meetings can be useful for, is assessing what work's being done and giving feedback and reflections and pointers.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm just going through our notes. I don't think we'll actually touch on this explicitly. But one of the things that I think is important to understand in a group, and particularly with the size of the group as well, is who's in charge, right? So having a chairperson, for example, in a project group seems like a good idea, but actually that can be a point of information as well, right? So if you have a chairperson, then it's sort of assumed that that person is going to take care of everything, and the rest of the group can just sort of dangle along and hope that they don't get too much work assigned. So in terms of group management, if you like, Alex, what sort of things would you do to try and make sure that you get everything online, that planning actually happens?
So, as a chairperson, that doesn't actually necessarily mean that you do all the work. For sure, 100%. I am chairperson of an organisation, and to be quite honest, I do about the same amount as everyone else who's in that organisation. And all that being a chairperson means is you're the one who, in a meeting, asks the questions. You're the one who helps to make things flow and make sure everyone's getting involved and has their chance to have their say. And you're almost just keeping people to time.
Yeah.
So that's all a chairperson does. It doesn't mean you do more work.
No.
And
That
one way that I think
timekeeping is actually really important. So a chairperson's role is more about facilitating the discussion than leading the discussion, and people don't always understand that.
Yeah.
The other thing that really helps, and sorry, I'm just interrupting you rudely here. The other thing that really helps is actually have everybody in the team understand their responsibility and give them everybody a reasonable job as well. So it's not just a chairperson. You can get, you can have a secretary, someone who keeps track of all the notes and minutes and all the planning documents, stuff like that. You can have someone who's best at the graphical side of things. You can have someone who's a good writer, for example, who can put the report together. So again, we're going back to that, what we talked about in the beginning, is understanding your group and knowing who's in the group. And actually taking some time to talk to each other about, what are you good at? What would you like doing? How can we make the most of the skill set that you have is really important. Yeah,
I totally agree with what you just said, Tim. I think one of the ways to get everyone to actually do something is by giving everyone a clear and defined task.
Yeah.
And by asking them to present their task in a meeting. And don't always expect everyone to have done everything for that meeting. And if someone hasn't done the work, don't just shout at them. Try and help, see what you can do to support them with that work, because some people might not be able to get as much done for a particular meeting as others, but do make sure they've got a specific area and try and guide them along the area.
Yeah.
Because if you give them something to do rather than just something generic, that can really help them.
Yeah. So Leon's asked another question, and we are actually going to touch on this in a second. But when you reach a wall after reaching out multiple times, at what point do you actually raise this as a concern with regards to communication? So we've actually thought about how we're going to put the session together. I think we're ready to talk about that now, Alex, aren't we?
Yeah, pretty much. I think we've covered everything, or the main piece of advice that we've got. We have got some advice also on our skills guide that we'll show you later. But yeah, so now we're going to talk about what you should do when some difficulties do come along within group work. So referring to what Leon said, Tim, what advice would you give when you've reached a wall after reaching out to someone multiple times who might not have done the work?
Yeah, so this is really interesting. There's several things that you can do, right? The first thing I want to point out is that the reason that you've been asked to do group work isn't to make your life difficult. And we've talked about this before with exam questions and stuff like that. Your lecturer does not actually benefit from you failing as a group, right? There is no benefit whatsoever in that going wrong. So a coaching meeting with your lecturer, with whoever is giving the module, might be a really good intervention. If you feel it is really going wrong, it's worth actually talking to your lecturer and actually signaling early on that there might be a problem. But don't expect the lecturer to come in and go, okay, I'm going to do this, and then the problem's away. All that the lecturer will do, in most cases, is actually say, okay, well, how are you going to resolve this? What are you wanting to do to actually make this problem go away? And it's, again, in the lecturer's benefit that you as a group manage to resolve that issue. So I manage a number of people in real life, as a manager in the library. And I don't gain anything from having people say they don't like each other, because what am I going to do about it, right? If you feel like you're not getting on with someone because they've not done the work, then you need to find a way to resolve that. And that's actually that bit of learning that's intrinsic in working as a team. What I will say is that the key to stopping that becoming a problem is keeping track, like we said before, of everything that you do. Plan the work really extensively. Make sure everybody understands what their role is, and make sure everybody's on board as well. Give everybody a substantial piece of work rather than trying to pack them. The worst examples I've seen, I'm just digging back to my time when I worked over at Loughborough, is I had a group there that before they even got together, it was a group of 5 people, if I recall well, and 4 of them knew each other really well, and they decided straight away that the 5th person was not necessary, and they didn't interact with this person. And I got this person actually coming to me and go, look, I've got a major issue because I want to contribute, but I'm not being asked to do anything. And that's actually really frustrating, isn't it? So make sure that you understand that as a group, you have the responsibility to come to the end product. And it's not about appointing 1 or 2 people who are clever and know everything to do it, because that's not what the lecturer is looking for. The lecturer is looking for that evidence of group work, so make sure you do that.
I've got an example as well from when I was a student. So my first year, there was a student there's actually 2 students within one of my groups, and they just disappeared. Like, to be quite honest with you, like they wouldn't respond to our messages, they wouldn't even open them. And we were trying to think about what we could do to try and get in contact with them. So in the end, after multiple failed attempts to get in contact with them, we spoke to the lecturer. The lecturer sent them an email, and we then managed to get in touch with him, and we just tried to arrange everything as much as we could around him, or give him options. It turns out he was struggling with lots of things at the time, and as soon as we found out that, and he realized that we were not trying to get on his back for not doing the work, but help him and support him with that work, he actually helped a lot. I don't think that can always happen. I don't think that's always going to be the resolution, but try to think about as many creative options as you can to try and get in touch with that person, is what I would recommend having really that experience, because often people do want to help. They aren't just at university not to do anything, but as long as they realize that they're not being punished for not doing the work, or that you just want to help them with it, that might help. And especially as soon as you start understanding why they aren't doing the work rather than just they aren't doing the work, that can really help with you creating solutions.
That's a really important point, Alex, actually. And I think, again, I speak from my experience as a manager. If I have someone who doesn't want to do a certain task who works for me, the wrong approach is to go to them and say, look, if you don't do it, I'm going to get really pissed off with you, right? Because that doesn't actually generate any relationship skills or anything like, there's no positive capital to be had in that. The right thing to do is to actually go to that person and say, what do I need to do to make sure that you can actually achieve what I'm asking you to do? And that's a very different approach. So that's actually one of the things, Alex, and I'm pleased you raised that. You see that go wrong in groups a lot, where 1 or 2 people feel that they've been put on the spot, where they feel they are doing more than everybody else. And because of that, they get angry with everybody else. And that anger is really unproductive, right? And although I understand that you are feeling angry because you are doing more work, that's not the right answer. That's not the solution to actually get out of that situation. So understanding that human dimension is really important, you might be working with someone who's actually doing another module that's actually really demanding, that you're not doing at that point in time. So be aware of that and talk to each other and keep that communication going is really, really important.
So, Tim, we've just had a really good question from Zoe in the chat saying, what advice would you have for UDOL students who, when we only really have the email addresses of other students who are often dotted around the world when they don't reply? So when they don't reply, what can we do?
The joy of remote working, isn't it? I've recently, and again, it's useful to draw on my own experiences. So I still am a part of a conference committee. So we're setting up a program for a conference, and it's for the international. I'm trying to not butcher the name now. It's the Asian Digital Library Conference, ACDL. ACDL? Anyway, it's an Asian conference. So let's say we've got people from India, China, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and then there's a bunch of Brits and Americans, because we're always getting involved with everything. So having those meetings is it's interesting, right? Because my best mate, for example, is a professor in Wuhan, which is how I got onto that committee. And his time difference is such that if he rings me at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which for me is usually when I start having time available in the day, he's actually, 1 o'clock at night. So bearing that in mind is really important. And actually that time difference with UDOL students in particular can be really tricky to manage. So what you need to do then is think about how you can facilitate that communication in a suitable way where everybody can contribute. And with UDOL, again, the challenge is that people have their own lives next to the study that they're doing. So if you've got someone in the United Arab Emirates, you've got someone in London, you've got someone in San Francisco, it will be really difficult to find that time to actually talk to each other, but you will have to make that effort, because speaking in person, even if it's through a camera on a computer, is always beneficial. So do try and find those opportunities to communicate. If you're not getting any response whatsoever, then you will have to talk to your lecturer and make clear that you have reached out. And the way to do that, be quite persistent, send an email, send 2-3 different emails over a period of time to try and get hold of this person. And then the fourth email can be one where you CC and the lecturer, actually asking the lecturer to check the email address because you're not sure you've got the right one. So you're actually notifying in a very friendly way the lecturer of the fact that you've not had a reply for several attempts. What do they want you to do about it? And then you can have a conversation with your lecturer to see if you can find a solution to it.
I totally agree with that advice, Tim. I think that'd be something that I would do if no one was talking to me. Another thing that you can do potentially as well is when you first meet people, try and get their contact details more than just the email, because some students don't check their email very often. So I would always say to people, what's your preferred method of communication, and try and work out a way that works for everyone. So in the past, I've had Facebook groups, I've had WhatsApp groups. Now we've got Teams. That could be a way, but if some people don't have access to Teams all the time, is there a better way of communicating just in general? So agree a method of communication, but also don't be afraid of having people in different people's contact details in different ways so that you can get through to them.
Yeah, and also keep in mind that certain tools are not available in certain countries. So again, if you're working internationally, my friend in Wuhan, I can't talk to him through Teams because Teams is not actually it's not available with international connections because of the restrictions they have on internet use. So instead we use FaceTime because he has an iPhone, I've got an iPhone, and that does work. But being creative with finding solutions to communicate to each other is really important. Email is sort of a baseline. Everybody has access to email. So use that to try and discuss what way you could actually communicate to each other. Yeah. Have we got anything else?
Yeah, so there's two more areas that with problems that you could have within a group work, and one of them is a problem which people don't always notice happening or realize is even a problem, and that's what happens when you've got a student who dominates the group work. So I'm just going to say that just the person who speaks the most in a group is not always the person who has the right ideas or is the most intelligent. There's not a direct correlation there. They might be, that might be true. But just because someone's dominating the group and is always talking doesn't actually mean that they are the one with the best ideas, because the best ideas come from the whole group. So Tim, what do you recommend doing if someone is overly dominating a group?
Yeah, so that's always a tricky situation, isn't it? Use your human skills, right? That's step one. So you've got to be very humane in the way that you deal with something like that. And actually saying to someone to the face that they are wrong is probably going to provoke a negative reaction. You get people, putting up their collar and go, I'm not wrong, and blah, blah, blah. That doesn't really help at all. So again, having a good dialogue about things and make sure as a group you agree on how you want to go forward is really important. So let's say that you've got a group of 7 people and one person has come up with a wonderful idea and they happen to have 3 friends in that group, but the idea is wrong according to the 3 other people still in that group. Have a dialogue, right? Talk about it. Explain why you feel that there is a problem with the proposal that has been put out. And don't make it emotional, right? It's not an emotive subject. If you're working together in a paid career, having that emotion cloud everything doesn't help at all. So try and keep that emotion out of it. Be rational, be pragmatic, and just explain it in the way that, it makes sense. So if there is an obvious problem with someone's argument, then it should also be really easy and obvious to explain what the problem is. So stay human, stay rational, stay pragmatic, I would say with that.
Yeah, I agree with those as well, Tim. Something which we talked about earlier that could help with people who dominate is a chair role. And this can also help with something else, which are for students who do attend but don't actually say much because they're quite shy. And having a chair role can really help facilitate discussion. That means that people who talk too much, because sometimes have to be timed for how long they can contribute. Sometimes they can help move along or invite other people to comment. Also, another thing that you can do is plan out like an agenda for a meeting and say, okay, here's what we're going to talk about. And if you've got rough timescales for that, that can help you with coming up with, okay, this person's going to present here. So that means that everyone has a chance to actually present what they're doing and talk. And if you have got someone who is shy and doesn't want to talk, something that you can do is help facilitate them by inviting them to talk and really not be mean to them when they do talk, but try to encourage them to talk and like nod your head and things like that. Is there anything else you'd add, Tim, for people who are slightly shy?
So, you know that I do this in meetings anyway. I always go around. I make what I call a circle. You know, I ask people what they want to contribute to the meeting. I think that's really important. I think it touches on something that Leon has just asked as well. Could you agree on the rule to reply within 2 working days? Having those rules is really important. So, what a good chairperson, if you have got a chairperson, what a good chairperson does is actually facilitate everybody to be able to contribute. So, it's that human factor, isn't it? You need to be aware that someone's really quiet, and then you need to encourage them to actually contribute to the conversation. So the way to do that is, you know, Alex, have you got anything to say about that, or what are your thoughts on that? And it's really important also to realize, this is something that I've only learned in the last few years, but some people need time to process what's going on. So we've got Naomi in the chat, and Naomi actually literally tells me, Tim, I need to think about this. You know, when I'm pushy for an answer or something else, Naomi will actually tell me and say, look, let me just go away for a day and I will reply to you tomorrow because I need to process what we've just gone through. And that's absolutely fine. That's actually brilliant. So if you're that quiet person, make sure that you understand that you are a quiet person in that group. But also make sure that you still contribute as well. Because again, it's about that shared effort, that group effort. So you have a responsibility, even if you don't like talking in that group, to still contribute. So do pick that up. I think that's really important.
So yeah, I agree with that, Tim. That is all that we've got time for in terms of difficulties with group work. But we have got a video on our YouTube channel about dealing with difficulties in group work. And we also have a video about tips for doing group work as well. So I will so check them out on the YouTube channel by just searching group work on the channel, as well as Derby Union Library, and they should come up. Naomi, would you be able to put them in the chat at all?
Oh, we're assuming Naomi's still there. She might have gone for lunch.
If Naomi's still here, can you put them in the chat? If not, then just search it on YouTube after the session. So now that we've done with that was our advice for group work, but we have asked students via a workshop that we ran yesterday what advice they would have for group work. So we've got 5 pieces of advice that I'm just going to read out now. And Tim, I'm going to invite you to comment on them after I say each one. So the first piece of advice that was given was to create some ground rules between the group members and to define the roles and responsibilities. So what do you think about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Before you even step into the group work, make sure that you understand the ground rules and have agreed the ground rules. So again, like Leon says, if you agree that you reply to an email in 2 days, then make clear that that is what you do. Also, really key, I think, in any group work, especially at university, is explaining what you expect from everybody. That's a rule in itself, you know. So yeah, rules are really important, and agree them really early on as well.
I totally agree as well. I thought you'd agree with that one. So the second piece of advice is to understand that just because people approach things in different ways doesn't mean that it's wrong. So try and have some understanding and patience.
Yeah, so we've just talked about that, haven't we? Certain people will need some more time to process things. Certain people will be more on the front foot. It actually reminds me of something that you might be able to find out on the internet. If you Google this, I will type it in later as well. There's something called the Belbin. Is it Belbin? Belbin group roles, where you can do a sort of personality test. What type of group person are you? And that's really interesting. And it's not about Belbin, it's about having that understanding that there's different people and different dynamics. And that, you know, the best groups actually consist of different types of people. So I'm really blessed having Naomi and Alexander because they complement what I bring to the table. and that means that we operate really well as a team. So being aware of each other's strengths is really important. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. You don't just want to have people who all agree with the same process. You want to have people who challenge and suggest different things. I think that's really useful.
Yeah.
So the third piece of advice given by a student called Barbara said, I think the key to successful group work is to really participate. Even if you are shy and you don't feel comfortable talking to other students, you might not know it, if that is the case. It can be hard, but please try to leave your comfort zone and express your thoughts and ideas, as this may be very, very, very beneficial to the group.
So this is the interesting debate about what is your responsibility as a student whilst you are conducting your studies. And I don't want to go into this because it's a really interesting debate. But actually, yes, I would agree with that to the extent that challenging yourself should be part of doing a study, right? So if you know that you're uncomfortable in a group situation, challenge yourself, become more comfortable, reflect on it. We've talked about reflective writing and reflective working. Try and get better at the things that you feel you're weak at is actually really important in your journey as a student. And those skills that you pick up by challenging yourself are definitely going to be worth it at the end of it.
I agree with that, Tim. If you just did what you're good at, you become very, very sharp in one area, but you have key weaknesses. Whereas if you try to become more rounded, you may end up finding that you may end up finding later in life that you needed that roundness or that skill that you've developed without thinking about it. The fourth piece of advice is to start as early as possible. So it's a very short one.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. Especially with group work, there's going to be kinks in the cable later on. Work together as soon as possible, get to know each other as soon as possible. Please do not leave everything to the last week because, in my experience, whenever you come across a really poor piece of group work, it's usually a case of, oh, we only started 3 days ago. Mm-hmm. That's your own bloody fault. If that's the case, then you deserve the grade that you get. Go away and try better next time, essentially.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense to me as well. The earlier that you do start, the better. And if we're unlike a normal assignment, you can't just do it the night before because you'd have to have everyone working out the night before, and some people might not be able to do that. So do start as early as possible because then that means you can arrange times that do work for everyone. Otherwise, some people might have to be left along doing not. Some people may end up doing more. Some people may end up doing less.
Yeah.
Thank you for noticing that as well. So the fifth piece of advice is to arrange
regular. They always just type £3 to charity in the chat. Why?
Yes. You swore.
Where?
Anyways.
When? What did I say?
I heard it, Tim, as well. Anyways, so the fifth piece of advice is to arrange regular meetings that is at a time that suits everyone's commitments. This means that you can do work before each meeting, discuss it at the meeting, and what to do next regularly.
You want a reaction now? I am livid. I didn't even know I swore. Anyway, like and subscribe, people. Very important. Regular meetings. We talked about this a bit earlier in relation to a question we got from Zoe. Yes, really important. And make it so that people are comfortable actually attending those meetings as well. That's, it's common sense almost, isn't it? And also keep in mind that some people love working at 9 o'clock in the morning. Other people love working at 8 o'clock at night. Try and find a bit of a balance in that. And don't railroad people by insisting on a specific time.
I agree as well. I think that all those pieces of advice are solid. So thank you to all the students who contributed those advice. They're really good. If you want to give advice in the future or answer any of our questions, then we ask them either at our workshops or on social media, which you can follow us on at Derby Uni Library on Twitter and Instagram. So talking about the last piece of advice, one of the specific things that is important that they said was that you could actually do the work before the meeting, discuss it at the meeting, and plan what to do next regularly. Well, something that can be really helpful to plan what's next and to know what's going on is a task management sheet. And that's what we're going to show you now. So, Tim, are you able to show people, first of all, how to access our group work skills guide, and then second of all, the task management sheet within that?
Yes, I can. I just put in a nice transition to the swear jar slide. I don't know if you've seen it yet, Alex.
I have, yes.
Yeah, it's we need that. It's really important that we highlight these particular skills. I don't know. Have we picked a charity yet?
No, not yet. But anyways, so
Oh, sorry, yes. Oh, yeah, Tim,
skills
get on
guys
with
too.
it. Yeah, okay. This was actually, by the way, a nice interaction that you get in a group. Alex knows that I like going off track and talk about something completely random, and he therefore knows that he can actually put me back on track by telling me that I need to get on it, which is really good example of successful group work. Right, I'm going to show you how to get to the library page, first of
And the
all.
group work skills guys.
Yes, I'm going to the library. And then I'm going to find subject information. And then I go to skills guides. And then I go to the group work skills guide, which is, I think this is our newest, isn't it? You made this.
It is. It came out last week, or was it the week before?
Yeah.
I don't know. Things went together very recently. It's a new guide that's come out recently. And if you scroll down on the page, then you can see the task management sheet.
Yes. I'm just reading the. Sorry, Alex, I was reading the instructions. So the task management sheet, if I click on this, I'm not going to be able to show it.
Okay.
I think.
Good to know.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to show it.
Can you find a way of doing that with a technical difficulty slide?
Ooh, yes, that's exciting. I could try
So
to do that.
I'll explain this what this is while Tim finds a creative way of showing it on screen. So essentially, I have made a task management sheet, and what this sheet is it is a sheet that allows you to manage your task. So the task management sheet is it can be found within the group work skills guide, and I'm just going to open it up myself. And once Tim gets it open,
it's going to take a while, Alex, unfortunately, because it's a new scene. So
that's fine. So essentially, what this is that the sheet is broken down into two parts. First of all, a place where you can type in group names and who's in the group, what roles they are, what tasks they're working on, and also their contact details, which I think is really important to know how people want to be contacted so that you've got methods to contact them. Then the sheet has a second element, which is a task management table. So I'll explain this once this is up on screen, but essentially what this allows you to do is add in what actions you've got, when they can be completed by, a review date, who they're assigned to, and so on.
It's not going to work, Alex. I'm just letting you know now.
Work. Okay.
I'm not able to get it for some reason.
If you are watching, then Naomi, I shall send a link in the chat to the guide, and then you can open it up yourself if you really want to.
Yeah, apologies. We're back on camera, Alex. I can't get it to work because it doesn't want to pick up Word for some reason. So,
can you share just your screen?
Yeah, but then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, there's a sheet available that is really useful for filling in what actions you've got, who they're assigned to, what date to be completed by, and when they've been completed. And I've made an example one, and I've also got a one that's been. So I've got a blank one and one that's been filled out, and it can be really useful for planning what's going to come next and what you're going to do. So I'd highly recommend after this is finished, have a look at it. If you aren't able to open it, Leon, then send me an email and I'll send it to you as a PDF. I'll have to add it as a PDF then as well.
We need a solution for this, Alex. This is a bit of reflection that we need to think about. Frankly, I should have thought about this before we started, but yeah, I am sharing the browser still, Alex. So
sounds good. But this is reflection. This is something that you can improve between the sessions. We'll have to find another way to show documents like this.
Yes. The problem is that because we're using OBS, it's not like Collaborate Ultra where you can just share whatever's on your screen. So that means that we need to set it up a bit different for the next time, but we could work on that.
Yeah. So yeah, have a look at that after the session. If you are interested in having the sheet, then you if you can't access it and you want to have it, then send me an email and I'll send you a PDF, and I'll also try and update it to be a PDF after the session's finished. Yeah. So that document, I highly recommend having a look at it. It's really good in some of your spare time. So the next part of the presentation will work, I'm pretty sure. And what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about group presentations.
Never say it will work, I'm pretty sure. You've just jinxed it. Ooh. There we go.
Okay, cheers, Leon.
So, Alex, this is a presentation that you've been working on. I like that it says that we're all three of us are delivering it, but it's mainly your work, isn't it, at this point? Oh, wait, this is the wrong one. Look at it.
Next slide, Tim. Next slide.
Oh. Oh, God,
Is
you had
this
me
the new
scared
updated
there.
version, or is this the old version?
I think this is the updated version.
Okay. So, we're now going to talk about group presentations, which are really important because as a student, you may actually be asked to do a group presentation as part of an overall group assessment. So the following advice that I'm going to give will help you to ensure that you avoid some common mistakes that can happen within group work, and to help your work or your group presentation appear as professional and well practiced as possible. So this advice comes from my experiences and reflections as a student. So I've done a number of group presentations as part of group work, but I've also done presentations as a student as part of the peer assisted learning scheme, and also from my experiences in delivering as part of the skills team. So the first piece of advice that I have for you is, before the presentation even is attempted to be built, is to actually try and divide the presentation into parts. So agree who's doing what part and what the overall structure and flow of the presentation will be. So therefore, you should, as a group, discuss and agree a plan of what content will be delivered and how you would like to split it. So what you should achieve by this is each person or each group of people, if there's a small subgroup, should have a clear and distinct part of the overall group project that they cover. This is really important because when you're actually doing the group work presentation, each part, they often have strict time limits and every single second will count. Therefore, it's really important to have strict parts that don't overlap, because if there is an overlap, then you're wasting that time that you've got. So try your best to work out clear parts for each person to have without any overlap. So agree what content is going to be covered by whom. So Tim, can we have the next slide? So when you do a presentation, there should be consistency of two things. First of all, consistency of content, and second of all, consistency of design. So consistency of content can be achieved through agreeing a structure before you actually start actually working on the presentation. So agree who's going to say what, and agree what your overall answer is going to be from the group presentation. This can help it make it seem so that your work is actually not just an individual's work, but a coherent, large group work structure. So that you aren't saying things that might oppose each other, or even things that are just repeated.
Can I jump in for a second, Alex?
Jump in, Tim.
So one of the things that when we discussed this presentation earlier, I talked about was the Frankenstein presentation, which is where you have a group of people standing in front of the class, and they are, let's say, there's 6 of them, and they all talk about a completely different piece of information than what you thought they were going to be talking about, and that's really bad, if you like, because it makes it's very obvious at that point that you haven't actually thought about what the overall message of your presentation as a group is. And if you want to lose marks, that's one of the best way to do it. So make sure that you don't Frankenstein your presentation. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. So the second thing that you can do, as well as also making sure that everyone's not talking about different content, but also within the same message, is to create a consistent design. So throughout our presentations that we do on site, we always have the same type of template, and we always use the same consistency of slides, so that it appears that we are working as a group rather than as a set of individuals. So what you should agree is that you should agree a brand almost, or some form of design that is consistent with your presentation. So this is, again, like Tim said, to avoid a Frankenstein type concept where you've got different parts of the presentation that just look completely different to each other. They've got different text, they might have different background colors, and this just doesn't look professional at all. So try and make it so that your entire presentation has a consistent format or design that you can follow. So you can achieve consistency by actually creating a slide design. So if you go to the design tab on PowerPoint, there are often lots of templates that you can use, but you can also create your own if you'd like, using the customize section on the design tile. So That's one thing you can do. Also, though, I would recommend once you've put everything together, agree one text, keep the text size consistent throughout, keep the font consistent, make sure the background colors are set as what they should be, and make sure that all the transitions between the slides are the same. That way, it looks professional, it looks like you're all on the same page, and that you're organized. But what Tim said earlier was that things will, when you're talking about content, you might notice that the content is completely opposing each other. Another way to help beat that is by practicing, and practicing some more. So by practicing as a group, you get to see what the end picture will look like. If you record it as well, that can really help. But what I'd recommend doing is practicing both individually on your own and then as a group. By practicing individually, you can learn to get your head around what you're saying and make it as good as it can be, so that when you are meeting as a group, you can properly use the time you've got to shape how the group works and how the group's going to be doing it. I'd also recommend learning who is going to say what and when they're going to say it. That way, you're professional, you know who's jumping in after who, otherwise it just looks really off. So by practicing, you can really help learn what the order is and also what the overall message is going to be and reflect upon it. So you can record PowerPoint from within PowerPoint, so you don't need any other tools. That's really good. I believe you go to the slideshow tab and then click record slideshow, and you can record it and you can also listen to the audio. Alternatively, you can actually just record with a camera or someone's phone what's going on. That way you can see actually how the group is acting. And I would recommend doing that because you can see your body language and you can analyze that too. After you've watched the PowerPoint back, I'd recommend giving everyone feedback and reflecting on the overall presentation. However, because you're in a group work scenario, try to be positive with that feedback somewhat, but also when you do give negative feedback, do it constructively, because some people might be quite shy and some people might not take very nicely to criticism that's completely negative. So even if you have a negative point, try to say it in a constructive way so that people will want to keep doing it and want to keep working better and improving, rather than just say that was terrible. So always offer a solution. However, as we discussed earlier, as one of the pieces of student advice said, just because you think something should be done in one way doesn't mean, and you do something one way and someone does something in another way, doesn't necessarily mean that what they're doing is wrong. People have lots of different presenting styles, and people often will use their own personal style and brand of presenting. So yes, it's really important to reflect on the feedback and to practice a number of times. I'd recommend practicing at least once or twice though. So finally, and this is really, really, really important, you need to keep to timings. That's because in a presentation scenario, and let's say you're doing it in front of your lecturer, if one person goes over their timings, then that means every single other person in that group has to reduce theirs by a small amount. What this means is people might end up rushing slightly, people can make mistakes, or some people might just be completely missed if they're right at the end, and some content might not be covered. So it is really important to practice the timings a few times. So what I'd recommend doing is, before you even start writing the presentation, when you're working out what the content's going to be, agree some strict time limits for each part of the presentation and practice keeping to them. When you agree those time limits, add some flexibility in them. Sometimes people might say things a little slower, or they might stumble upon the words because of nerves. So do practice the timings, but also add some flexibility into them. Within PowerPoint, there is on the slideshow tab a feature called rehearse timings. That is really useful for checking if people are sticking to timings or not. What this does is it allows you to see how long people are using for each slide, and after you've got it right, you can actually set the slide just to change after the timings. Although I probably wouldn't recommend doing that. So the rehearse timings feature is really good because you can check how long it's going to take for someone to say something. So in summary, with group presentations, the first step, which is good, is to divide the presentation between the group to ensure that there's a clear plan, everyone knows what is on the same page, and that there's no overlap in terms of content and coverage. Within the presentation, you need to ensure that there's both consistency of content and design so that it looks uniformed and it also is organized with a single coherent group and looks like a single coherent group effort. And finally, ensure that you're actually able to practice as a group at least once before the event so that you have time to reflect and improve the content and your delivery. And to ensure that you can actually deliver the presentation within the time limit. So that's my advice for group presentations. Tim, have you got anything you'd like to add to advice for group presentations?
No, not really. I think you've touched on most. I think the one thing I would highlight, and I'm not showing it because I'm sure technically it'll be a lot more difficult than I think it is at the moment. But that new rehearse feature is really, really useful in PowerPoint. So do definitely try that out, even if you're doing a presentation on your own. I think it's a really powerful tool for you to get more confident about things. And then the other thing I will say is, and we did a live stream on this last year. If you look for me, but then in a big yellow jumper.
It's called Coping with Nerves.
Coping with Nerves, that's the one. So I'll just really quickly go over that. It's about understanding that there's something called performance anxiety. So you will always have a bit of anxiety when you're being asked to perform in the way that you are being asked to perform when you do a presentation. And those nerves are really normal and you don't need to worry about it. It's only when that anxiety becomes more and uncontrollable in a way that you need to start worrying about it. But for most people, being nervous before a presentation is perfectly normal, and dealing with those nerves, understanding that is normal, will make dealing with those nerves easier, is basically what I would like to add to that. You want the last slide as well, Alex? Or
no, thank you, Tim.
No.
Okay. So yeah, if someone is nervous before a presentation, which is something that I've just thought of, it actually might be useful to tell them that. Something that I found explaining to people if they're nervous before a presentation is to actually tell them that I always get nervous before presentations, and I'm sure Tim does as well. Like, I get quite nervous before I do any of these classes or presentations, but it's just about people realizing that other people, that you might not be nervous, and then realizing that actually they can do it.
Yeah.
So try to comfort someone who's nervous, and don't just shout at them, be like, yeah, you can do it.
You're a group.
It'll be fine.
You know? You're a group. You have to deal with it as a group. You can't actually do it yourself. You know, it's a group effort. What is a fact, though, definitely a fact, and you can see it with these live streams. If you do it regularly, and the more regularly you do it, the less nervous you'll become, the more used you become to being on camera, or being in front of a group of people, and being prepared is really important as well. So understanding what you're going to do and why you're going to do it in the way that you're doing it, just, practice makes perfect, I would say, is really important. Yeah, but that's a good little live stream. So I don't know, I'm not going to put the link in now, just look for it, you'll see it, Coping with Nerves. I thought that was really fun to record back then, and it's got some good tips in it as well. Good. Questions. We've had quite a lot of questions. I'm just going to scroll through the chat. We've talked about that. Patricia asked if we can emphasize more on the tips needed for a successful group campaign. Patricia, I genuinely think we've touched on all of the tips now. But if you have any other questions, do let us know. Oh, apologies. Drink more water, very important. When you reach a wall. Ta-da. The non-working microphones, Leon's asked about. That's actually something that we didn't talk about. We talked about the benefit of technology. How do you deal with when technology goes wrong? And not just in terms of presentation, but also group work. Frankly, if you plan the work properly, then you will actually be able to cope with it. So we have, and this is a good opportunity to introduce it again, we have Unexpected Naomi, because Unexpected Naomi is a way for us to actually indicate that there's something going wrong, right? So that's a way that you can cope with that. Really important though is when you work as a group, make sure you have some responsible system in terms of the files that you're using, whether they're stored in the same central place. These days, if you use OneDrive, if you use SharePoint, you will always get the opportunity to review the revision history, so you can actually see who's been working on things. So technology, it's coming along really well, and I think it's getting better and better. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind. Have we got any other questions, Alex?
Not currently yet. I just thought it's useful to say about what happens when things go wrong. I don't know if you've noticed in this live stream, but I think we've had quite a few things go wrong. So we started off with me being called Naomi.
The
What
PowerPoint
else
slide,
happened?
first slide was wrong.
Yeah, things like that happen. And so the best advice is if something has gone wrong, don't let that one small thing that's gone wrong make everything else go wrong. Just go along with it. Sometimes even make a joke out of it.
Yeah. And there's a bit of experience there as well, Alex, isn't there? You know, it's you as a student, we expect you to be learning. So when I mark a group of people, I actually take into account that I don't expect you to be a fully capable, competent group worker, supreme. I take into account that you're in the learning process.
Yeah. So yeah, things do go wrong. Just smile, try go past it, and just keep going. Don't worry about the fact that you made one small mistake with your sentence.
No.
Just say it again, and keep going on.
Alex, can we have a performance review, please, after this live stream? Because I'm not happy with you at all. And
okay, cool.
I'm teasing you. You know I'm teasing you.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, okay. Naomi, is there any more for the swear jar? I don't think there was more, but I don't know.
Just £3.
I'm still confused. I don't understand where I swore, so we're going to have that discussion again, aren't we?
Well, I can see it on the video anyways, because I actually put my hand up to say I thought it was the second one. Turns out it was the third one. Because obviously I'd not been counting.
Naomi's counting bloody again, though. It's not fair.
That's 4.
No, it's not, because we agreed not to count bloody. Did we? I agreed. Anyway. Shall we call it a day?
Yes. So thank you to everyone who's watched so far, and also for everyone who added the tips in earlier, and everyone who's commented. I've really appreciated that. Tim, have you got anything to add before we end?
Yes, like and subscribe. So really important for us. We're growing like cabbage at the moment, which is really nice as a channel. But the more we grow, the better it is, because we get more visibility and then we reach more people, and we really want to make that happen. So like and subscribe. Do leave a like. Do like a subscribe. If you didn't like it, frankly, just hit that. Do that. It doesn't really matter to us. At least we get some feedback that way, and we know whether we've done a good job or not. So I would say thanks for watching. Growing like cabbage. Yes, Zoe. I don't know if that's a... is that an English expression? It's not, is it?
No.
It's a Dutch expression. There you go. So you have learned some Dutch expression here. £5, says Naomi. No way, Naomi. That's not happening. So I'm going to transition to our thanks for watching screen. Bye. That was good, Alex, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it went well.
Yeah, and Naomi's there.
I've not even seen the screen yet, Tim.
Oh, you're not seeing it? Oh, well, shall I click stop streaming now or in a second?
I can see it now. I can see it.
Okay, I'll click stop streaming.